I'd like to thank everyone for coming this morning. When Sharon initially asked me to share my experience as an immigrant, and she gave me the topic, the first thing that came, I thought was, I don't think there's anything, like, I've gone through this process, but I've never really felt that it had any impact on me until I started, preparing for this session. I know that many immigrants are here today and they think there's really nothing wrong with them. There's no impact on their physical or mental health because we just assume that, it's part of life. And so this morning I'll be sharing a brief story with you, my journey as an immigrant in Canada. And I'll be speaking to you from my perspective as a female, Black, from Africa. And so my experience is quite different from my husband's. It's quite different from the next immigrant who is an Asian. So my perspective is personal to me. So I'll just take you through my journey from before I came to Canada, the challenges that I faced when I got to Canada, the employment hurdles that I had, and the impact that it had on my family and my family, myself, and then how I survived all this. And so I'll just start. So I am from Nigeria in West Africa. Nigeria, I don't know how familiar you are with Nigeria, but it's a population of about 150 million people. We have about 149 people per square kilometer. Compared to Canada, it's about 3.3 people per square kilometer. So you can imagine there are lots of people in Nigeria. So, I am still a chartered accountant in Nigeria, but I live in Nova Scotia. I was a chartered accountant. I obtained my designation in 1991, and I worked for a privately owned organization. And when I left in 2001, I was the chief financial officer. And along the way, right from when we're born in Africa, and I'm sure it's a similar experience here, your parents teach you all these values that hard work pays, you should be fair, you should be accommodating, supportive, and have all these values in you as you grow up. And so all these values helped myself and my family, and we were doing quite all right from any standard in the world. We were fine. And my husband and I had a good job, good jobs, we were doing quite well. And then March 13th, 2001, around 1 a.m. in the morning, I was living then in an apartment building of a relatively safe neighborhood, and about 25 men came into our home, into the apartment building, with different weapons, any kind of weapon that you could imagine. They had knives, they had guns, they had machetes, they had every type of, and what did they come for? They came to steal. And they were armed. And so they went through the 4 apartments in the building. At the end of it all, I was injured, my husband was injured, my neighbors were injured, and the security guard to our building was killed. So after that, of course, to me, sleep was murdered for several months. We couldn't sleep. So eventually we had to move out of that neighborhood. In that same year, one of my siblings also faced a similar experience. And also my 2 of our friends were killed, similar experience. At that point, we decided it was time to leave. And so we decided that we would leave, but where do we go? And so we started our research, and we found that, well, Canada was one of the few countries that had an immigration process. And so we decided that we were going to apply to Canada to come and live. To come to Canada, you have several options. One of it, you can come in a ship and hide in the cargo. We didn't take that route. So the other is you can come in on humanitarian grounds. If people in Sudan, some people in Sierra Leone, and that live in refugee camps and have the option of coming into Canada as refugees. And I believe Yvonne will be speaking to that after the break. And then you have the independent class, which is the process that we used. And so for you to apply under the independent class, you have 3 options. The investor class. For the investor class, you must have a lot of money. I think it's about $400,000 you have in your back pocket. Family class, that will apply to someone who is already living in Canada and has family, like a spouse or children back home, and you would like to bring them, or your grandparents and things like that. And then the independent class, which skilled workers, professionals fell under. And I'll just give you why I decided to highlight. It's a point system. The Canadian immigration has a point system for the independent class, and the pass mark is 67. And so the breakdown of the points, you have education is 25 points, knowledge of English or French is 16 points, and if you have if you understand French, then you get the 24 points. And you have to have, to be able to read, your ability to read, communicate, speak, and speak and communicate, speak and read English or French. And then your work experience counts 21 points, your age 10 points, arrange employment 10 points, adaptability, how well you can adapt if you have family already here, if you've worked in Canada before, if you're already working in Canada. So all those count. And for me, we passed and we got the process. It took about 2 or 3 years. Then I understand it now takes 4 years. So that was how we got to Canada. We applied from Nigeria, and we got our visa. We had to do a medical test and all the, and then apart from that, you have to have $10,000 in your pocket when you arrive at the border in Canada. So it's not cheap. That's the summary of it. It's not cheap to immigrate to Canada because you have fees of about $2,500. You have, in my situation, we were a family of 5, the airfare to come here. So in total, you had to have about $30,000 US to be able to immigrate to Canada. So what were the challenges that we faced upon arrival? The expectation is that when you come into a new country, you have these hopes and aspirations, and you believe that everything will be fine. Unfortunately, that wasn't the situation, because the first thing that you feel is you're homesick. You miss your old way of life. You miss your family and friends, your customs, your traditions. You miss everything. And apart from that, because you're new here, you'll face a bit of social exclusion. You don't have friends here. People just sometimes look at you some way, and so you're uncomfortable for a very long time. And then you lose the support of your established network at home, family, friends that you call on when your daughter is sick, when there's something, because traditionally, our culture is that we are open. We talk about our problems to each other. A lot of psychiatrists, psychologists, and all those things don't exist. Well, they are in Nigeria, they are in Africa, but they're not as prominent as they are in North America. So we depend more on family. We talk to them about our problems. That's how problems are resolved. So you miss that. You're going through all this, and there's no family, real family to talk to help you. And so that is one of the challenges you face. And then the financial stress. You have this money that you bring to Canada. You're still waiting on your job. There's no job. There's nothing yet. And your money is running out, and you're beginning to panic. And at that time, you're thinking, okay, like I was a trained professional accountant, and the option I had then was, well, do you want to be a personal care worker? Do you want to go and be, do you work at Tim Hortons or McDonald's and stuff like that? So at that point, you are making a choice for your life. You're deciding, do I want to go through that, or do I want to stick to what I know and wait until I get a job? And so that is one of the other challenges. And then you have the cost of upgrading your credentials. When I came in, I quickly decided that, well, the only option I had, seeing that I was slow getting a job, was that I would go back to school and get my another designation. And I chose to do the CMA because it would be very difficult for me to get into, at that time, to get into the CA program, because I had to have a job and and I had to have, anyway, it wasn't the way for me to go. It would not have been the smoothest route for me to go through. So I decided on the CMA, and so I started, and I needed money to pay for my CMA. And at that time, I had no credit history. I had no credit card. So I went to several banks, and the answer was no, 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 no. And what choice did I have then until I spoke to someone that was kind enough to co-sign a loan for me, and that was how I got to pay for my CMA program. And so, and so those challenges, they just keep coming from north, west, south. It's like when it rains, it really pours on you as an immigrant. And then you have the cultural barriers. I came in with at the time that we arrived, I had an 8-year-old son. He was 8 at that time, and my daughter was 4, and I had a 12-week baby. And so we had this cultural shift. The sense of community, the respect that we have for our elders, and all these other things that we were used to just seem to, you are struggling every time. And as your children grow older, it becomes very difficult for you, because this is for my youngest daughter that was 12 weeks when she came here. She has known no other way of life. And I am here as a parent trying to say, no, we don't do that in Nigeria. That's not the way it's done. And she's like, what are you talking about? She doesn't understand. So it's quite challenging for us. And then you have even things like food. You are used to your traditional diet. You're used to eating this type of food. You come to Canada and you come to Nova Scotia, and you can't find your food. It's simple, but it's really, really difficult. And if you then make a choice, so I had to change my diet, of course. I had to start eating lasagna and all these other things. And so I adjusted quickly. My husband didn't adjust quickly, and I don't think he's adjusted till today. But so I had to adjust quickly. And then when you decide you want to buy, I had to sometimes ship them from Toronto, and at a very high cost. And then the job search. That is the most difficult part of it all for us immigrants. And that will lead to my next slide. And I'll tell you briefly about some of the hurdles that I faced. The first one is the lack of Canadian experience. Well, I wasn't born in Canada. I didn't school in Canada. As at the time that I got here, I would not have expected, nobody should have expected me to have Canadian experience as an accountant. But so affects you. You don't have that experience, and I know that at that time, I know that immigration settlement services is now doing more, but at the time, when I came in 2001, it was very difficult for us to, even they were organizing like 10-week training, like organizations to be part of a program where immigrants could go and work for free. They would be sponsored by the immigration settlement. It used to be called MISA then. But you didn't even find employers that were willing to enroll in that program, have you sit in their office to learn your work for 10 full weeks free of charge. And it was difficult. And it took me about, the first job I arrived in Canada October 1, 2001, and I didn't start working until January of 2002. So it took me about a year and a half. Then the non-recognition of your credentials. Your credentials are not recognized. You're underemployed. My first job was as a bookkeeper with minimum wage $6.50. And then you don't have the access to the hidden job markets, where Joe tells Buddy that they're looking for someone in their office and things like that. And then you have the language barriers. And so how did I survive? Family, friends, the help of people that just were committed to supporting me. They helped me, they wanted me to succeed, and they just stepped out of their comfort zone to just help us. And this eventually, I had mentors, I had the African spirit of not giving up, of wanting to survive and to overcome at all costs, and the support of these individuals. And so what impact did it have on me? On my immediate family, my extended family? They expect so much from you when you live in Canada. They think that you're sitting in a gold mine. And so we have this commitment of sending money home to them, and you are not able to afford it anymore. And so that's a challenge. And then newcomers now are luckier because we have gone through the experience and we are able to assist them. You have the financial impact as well of not being able to live at the standard that you were living before you arrived in Canada. And then the social, the exclusion that you feel, and your health, and all these incidences. There was a moment of silence for the doctor that passed away in Antigonish. I tell you, if you get to the bottom of it, it has to do with job loss and depression, and I don't know the facts, but I tell you that would have been the situation. And so I hope that at the end of today, we would all take this away and know that people really live through this, and that in any way that we can help, we should step up as individuals. If you're leaders in your organization, step up and do something. Thank you very much for your time.